Our Soledad O'Brien has also apparently had to evacuate because of these tsunami warnings. I want to check in with her. She joins us, I think, on the phone. Soledad, what's going on where you are?
Hey, Anderson, we're actually on top of a two-story building now. You know, we heard these tsunami sirens going off, and we've been told by the folks who were here reporting yesterday that, in fact, it happened fairly regularly, that the local officials had the jurisdiction to say if they thought that the water was going high, and they could sort of set up these tsunami warnings. And they've been pretty tight in the area as people are going back to grab their stuff. And you know, tensions are high, as you can imagine. So when we heard the first sirens go off, we were sort of inclined to ignore them a little bit because we hadn't felt any earthquake. And, of course, without a big earthquake, you know, there's not going to be a tsunami. And then I was listening to you interviewing Sanjay, talking about the quake that you felt early, aftershock that you felt earlier, that I did not feel here about an hour drive north of Sendai. And then Sanjay was saying that it started to sound official, that it wasn't just sort of local people saying, hey, tsunami, tsunami. And we were hearing people running by saying, there's a tsunami, there's a tsunami. We, in fact, heard that it was more official. So we sort of hightailed it and grabbed all our stuff as fast as we could and then climbed up to the highest structure, which is a 2.5-story building. And where we're camped out right now, we've been able to set up our beacons and our phones so that we could dial it in and just tell you what we're doing. So we're told, because there are choppers going over and some small planes as well, fixed wing, that it's 3 meters high at this point. So that's what we are expecting, a wave about that high to come in. And because the distance is about 1 kilometer from the sea, but a lot has been wiped out. So there's not a lot blocking as far as I can tell at this point. So we're just sort of sitting here waiting to see this wave come through if it does happen.
You know, it's interesting, Soledad. I think a lot of times people kind of think they see the earthquake which took place on Friday and the horrific tsunami, the scenes that we all watched on Friday as that unfolded, and you kind of think, well, it's over. That what happened is done, and now it's just the aftermath. But that's really not the right way to look at this. This is an ongoing disaster. I mean, not only with these tsunami warnings and concerns about that, you also now have this nuclear emergency, which is very much very real and very ongoing to the area south of where we are.
Yeah, you know, and everyone's very tense, obviously. For the people here who've lived through, the ones who've been able to live through a massive disaster, everyone's on edge. They've come back to grab the few things that they're going to be able to salvage. So, you know, you are sort of inclined to say, well, I didn't feel anything. I'm hearing sirens. Maybe this one they haven't gotten it right. But you're also sort of tightly wound because all around us, damage.
Soledad, I'm sorry, I got to break in here. Soledad, I'm sorry. NHK is reporting white smoke seen at nuclear reactor. Is it number 1 or number 3? I'm being told that white smoke rising from a blast was heard at reactor number 3, smoke rising from reactor number 1. We have Jim Walsh, our nuclear expert, CNN contributor, standing by. Jim, what does this tell you? What does this tell you, Jim?
Well, as soon as you started to say that, Cooper, I said unit number 3. The government had been earlier concerned that hydrogen was building up. Remember, at unit 1, we had an explosion. It turned out that explosion did not compromise the core facility, but the same process. What we're seeing, it's deja vu all over again. We lose a cooling pump. We have problems at one reactor. The hydrogen builds up. Then it explodes. That happened at Unit 1. Apparently now that's happened at Unit 3, and we're going to have to assess how significant the damage is. Hopefully it's just the outer structure, the concrete of the building itself, and has left unaffected the reactor and unaffected the containment vessel, because if it were to affect those things, that would be bad news. And by the way, they're actively trying to pump seawater into that unit number 3 in order to cool it down, and so we're going to have to wait and see whether that's going to affect that process, and that would certainly be unwelcome.
Jim, just hold on. I want to ask you a bunch of questions, but first I just want to ask my crew some questions. How far are we from Fukushima? North or? Okay, which way is the wind blowing? West. All right. I'm just concerned, Jim, if there's an event like this, you now have an evacuation zone around Fukushima, 20 kilometers, which is 12 miles. We're about 100 kilometers to the north of this reactor. Do you expect Japanese authorities to be expanding the evacuation zone?
It all depends on the particulars of this explosion.
Should I get out of here?
Yeah, I hear you, Anderson. And of course, I want to err on the side of caution for you here. My guess is that you're okay, but I don't want you to sue me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
But I'm inclined to think that you're okay, insofar as the government authorities had warned earlier that hydrogen was building up and that there might be problems with that. And so the most likely scenario is this is similar to what we saw yesterday, and if that's the case, then you should be fine. But, you know, there's a lot of uncertainty here, and we're not going to know for a little while.
There have been releases of, I guess, a gas, and correct me, I flunk science. So there had been releases yesterday, I think it was, and they had said that because of the way the wind was blowing, it basically whatever was released went out over the ocean. What was released? Why were they doing those kind of controlled releases? If you could explain that to our viewers.
Sure. What happened is it's getting very hot inside that reactor core because they're not able to cool it down. And there's water, the water that's already inside there is getting boiled, and that as it boils, it turns to steam and to vapor, and then the pressure begins to build up inside the reactor. Well, you don't want that pressure to build and build and build and then cause some sort of problem, cracks or some large, melting of the nuclear material. So, it's not the best choice, but compared to the alternatives, the choice is to release some of that vapor, which is mildly radioactive. It's not the same thing as what might be released if there was an actual full-blown meltdown. It's mildly radioactive, and they're also able to screen it. In some circumstances, they're able to screen it so that they can pull out some of the radioactive material that is being released. But in any case, they release it into the atmosphere, and then hopefully it blows out to sea. But it's not going to be a major health threat. It's not welcome. You don't want to do that. But it's not going to be a major health threat, and it's certainly far better than letting the pressure build and build and build until something much worse happens.
Well, we'll be watching to see if Japanese authorities do start to expand that evacuation zone. There's also been a lot of talk about Japanese authorities handing out iodine pills. I've yet to see that happen. We haven't had any, and we've yet to see that actually occurring around this area. But again, this is a situation, a fast-moving situation. Jim, if you could hold on, I'm also being told we've got Sanjay on the phone. And Sanjay, what are you hearing about waves nearby?
Well, we are at higher ground now, Anderson, just about the highest ground we could find. What we're hearing, and these again are coming from official reports, we're being very cautious in how we're telling you this, but helicopters flying over the coastline here say they have spotted waves about 3 meters high. Now, when the warnings went off, Anderson, when we last spoke, at that time they usually give you about a 15-minute notice, and that was about 10 minutes ago. So they say, we're looking here at the coastline. We don't see any activity yet, and again, we're trying to be very cautious here, but we're getting some official reports that helicopters have seen waves coming this way towards Sendai, north of Sendai, where we are, about an hour north, and we're just observing it. Now, I can tell you, closer to the coast now, earlier, they have moved all the vehicles out of it. There are long lines of vehicles all heading uphill, away from the coast. The area is now out, so there's vehicles out of that particular area. But again, right now I'm looking at the water. I know it's still 2 minutes away, as they say before, and potentially these waves could hit. It's pretty calm right now. We're just sort of standing by.
And Sanjay, how often are these kind of warnings? I mean, is there like a loudspeaker now continually going, or was this just something that occurred a while ago and now has stopped in terms of the warning?
Well, it was interesting because at first it seemed kind of sporadic, and at first it just seemed that locals were sort of shouting and running and yelling about it. And again, as I told you, and you and I saw it together in Haiti, it's hard to verify that, hard to know what that means. Sometimes these rumors can start, but since then there have been almost consistent warnings now. Sirens certainly at lower level. We're at higher level now, so we hear them more in the distance. But if you're at lower level, those sirens are constant. There are emergency vehicles moving around close to the coast, sort of really urging people, almost forcing people to move away from that area. They are also giving out specific information now on local radio, saying that the tsunami warning when it went off was a 15-minute warning, and that they have seen these waves. They're saying 3 meters. I don't know how you can get that exactly from a helicopter, but that's what they're saying in terms of the projected size of these waves right now, Anderson.
And how far away did they say the wave was?
Well, they gave a 15-minute warning about 10 minutes ago. So they're saying in about 5 minutes is what they're saying, again, on these local radio stations. We are here at the highest ground that we can find with officials from this particular, what is a refugee camp. They take schools off in Anderson, as you may know.
Don't do anything yet. I'll be very clear
They take schools and they turn them into refugee camps because schools are built at higher ground and built to withstand earthquakes even more so in terms of their building codes and other buildings. That's where we are now. There are hundreds of refugees in the building here, and we are just looking at the ocean. But there are lots of officials here who are sort of giving us this information to local radio and local reports. That's how the communication is being transmitted right now.
So you can actually see the water. How far from the water are you?
I'd say we're about a kilometer away from the water, anywhere between 500 meters and a kilometer away. I can see it. We're high ground. There are some buildings out between where we are and the water, but we can see it pretty clearly. We can see a couple of big boats, maybe almost ships in the water. They seem steady. They don't seem to be moving. The water seems calm where we can see it right now. But if you look at a map and you look at where Tsunami is, you'll notice that there are a lot of sort of various coves almost, so we're not looking
There's
at...
a 3-foot swell in the water, in the ocean, waves, a tsunami coming, more warnings beckon. Well, don't underestimate
so
what could happen.
Ongoing breaking situations. One
It's
possible, according to officials that Sanjay has heard from.
You don't know what it's doing.
Wave heading towards shore again. I don't want to make that sound
Much
more dramatic
different
than
from a
it may sound.
30-foot wall of water.
Than it should sound. A 3-meter.
But you should err on the side of caution
again,
if you're there.
That's what sources are
You're
telling
only
Sanjay.
very close to the
People are seeking
ocean.
higher ground in the area he's
After
in.
the tsunami that hit before,
reporting,
you don't want to underestimate anymore.
From one of the reactors at the Fukushima
just look
plant,
around and you'll see.
one of the
You see
plants in Fukushima,
devastation and destruction
Daiichi
from the
plant,
last tsunami that
smoke
hit.
has been seen
Right
rising
there
from
on
one of the reactors.
side of
We're
caution.
going to talk with Jim Walsh about that.
Why don't you, kid?
Okay, we're showing a lot of pictures right now of that facility. And again, Andrew, what was it again? It was smoke from reactor number 1, and what was from reactor 3?